So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, comrades in the struggle for love and peace and justice for all of us, I bring to you the dynamic, the loving, compassionate brother, Minister Louis Farrakhan.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent and Merciful, I bear witness that there is but one God, and I bear witness to all of the prophets of God and the scriptures of God. I greet all of you with the greeting words of peace in the Arabic language. Assalamu alaikum. To Sister Ramona Edelin, to Mayor Richard Hatcher, distinguished platform personalities, distinguished delegates to this distinguished summit. I am deeply honored and privileged to be here this morning to share with you thoughts on an agenda for our people. Thank you, Brother Dave Richardson, for your very loving and kind words. Mr. Reagan called Russia the evil empire and the focus of evil in the world. But no one objected to Mr. Reagan's visit with Mr. Gorbachev. Though philosophically, ideologically, they're miles apart. But the fate and the future of the world depended upon these two men who represented the two most powerful nations on the earth coming together to see how they could influence each other to make the world a safer place. If we can applaud that kind of meeting and take comfort from that kind of meeting, what is an African-American summit if it does not include all of the voices that struggle for justice for our people? If we have to meet thinking about who is offended by our meeting, then our mentality and our actions determine that we are yet slaves. If we are in fact a free people, we must not let white people who have a problem with any member of our community cause us to let their problem become our problem. They have problems with all who struggle for justice to one degree or another. They have a problem with me, and I understand. problem with Farrakhan makes a lot of us a little nervous because no one knows what brother is going to say. And they wonder if I will say something that will be explosive or, hurt the conference. That's still speaking, thinking from a slave mentality. I am your brother and a fellow sufferer with you. Whatever I say, I believe it is necessary. And I'm not concerned about who is offended by what I say. That's not my concern. And it should never be the concern of black people who would lead our people. That you should be concerned about what your brother is going to say in defense of a principle of justice to heal wounds in our own community. We are brothers and sisters, flesh of each other's flesh, blood of each other's blood, and bone of each other's bone. We either go up together or we sink or die together. We cannot go up in heart. We cannot look to the few who are in the middle class, who have maybe 2 paychecks away from poverty. If this is going to be a meaningful summit, must think in terms of the masses of our people who suffer while we sit, who bleed while we listen, who die. And why do they suffer, bleed, and die? The scripture says, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. It is ignorance that is our worst enemy, and fear to speak the truth after we know it. Now, since time is short and problems are long, I want to move immediately to our subject matter. In the 60s, when most of us were in the struggle, and as I look at this audience, I'm not looking at those who are newcomers. I'm looking at those who have not been burnt out by the struggle or copped out, which is another form of burnout, a manifestation of it. Since I'm a spiritual man, I hope you won't mind if I quote from the Quran to open my little talk, and from the Bible, since both of these books mean so much to me, and they really set forth the agenda. But of course, it is coded. And if we don't know how to break the code, we won't really extract the agenda. In the Holy Quran, in the 103rd chapter, which is called Al-Asr, meaning the time, I'd like to read just a few verses. It reads, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, consider the time. For by the time, surely man is in loss, except those who believe and do good, and enjoin one another to truth, and enjoin one another to patience. Consider the time, for by the time, surely man is in loss. Time dictates agenda. When you know the time, you know what must be done. What must be done is the agenda. It is predicated upon a good understanding of time. If you know the time or don't believe in the understanding given of the time, then you will not adopt the right agenda. And if you don't adopt the right agenda, then surely man is in loss. We have been having conferences after conferences after conferences, but these conferences have not produced an agenda that has lessened the suffering of our people. Why? It is because we have failed to understand the time and the requirements of the time. Or we know the time, we understand the time, but are too cowardly to move according to the requirements of the time. Man is in loss except those who believe and do good. We all want to do good, but good is not good for the sake of good. Good is good when it is appropriate, proper, in accord with time and the requirements of time, and brings about a good result. We've got to exhort each other to truth and exhort each other to patience. Now, what am I getting to? The word asr represents time, but a particular time. Asr is the afternoon prayer of the Muslims. It comes between the time of the zenith of the sun and the setting of the sun. By the time, surely man is at loss. We are now in the setting sun of Western civilization. Please listen. The sun is going down and darkness is coming upon us. And if we are not prepared to move through the setting sun of one world reality and the dawn of a new world reality, we will lose by going down with that which is going down and refusing to go up with that which time has said. Now, main problems in the world that the Western world has rooted itself in is racism, sexism, materialism, and a kind of poisonous nationalism. Now, if the sun is setting, it is setting on racism. It is setting on sexism. It is setting on this sick materialism without any spiritual or moral development. It is setting on nationalism that only makes us concerned with our own nation, but not concerned with the family of nations. Now, the time and what must be done. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to us that this world was given 6,000 years to rule. Its time is up. Caucasian rule is being challenged today by the rise of our brown brothers in Japan. They've challenged the West successfully, and they are #1 in mathematics, #1 in science, #1 in economics. Japanese. The Koreans are on the road. The Chinese are on the road. And the sons and daughters of Africa are beginning to move now. What are you challenging? What are we moving toward, and what are we moving against? We're moving against white world supremacy. We're moving against black inferiority to assert ourselves as the dawn of a new day comes. That the new day is dawning on us, and we've got to have a new activity, a new agenda, an agenda that fits us out for the 21st century, which will see imperialism on its way out, colonialism in all its forms being destroyed, racism being obliterated, wiped out totally. But in order to come alive to the dictates of the time, we've got to know who we are, where we fit in the scheme of things. Time dictates agenda. One more point. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that we, the black people of America, are written of in the scriptures of the Bible from one cover to another. I want to be very specific in the short time that we have, that we were prophesied to go into bondage to a strange people and nation for 400 years. Once that 400 years are up, God says He would come and introduce something different. A new relationship would have to be made, for the slave would no longer be a slave. The slave would have to think and act and take the responsibility of free people. And that's the problem. The problem is that we say we're free, but we don't want to think and act like free people. They say that Farrakhan is a voice of separation and hate and bigotry. I want to read something to you in a column by Mr. Don Sneed. It appeared in the Chicago Tribune back in 1988. He wrote, 2 decades ago, a presidential commission unceremoniously dubbed Lyndon B. Johnson's Riot Commission warned that America was moving toward 2 separate societies, one black and one white. Did you remember the Kerner Commission? Yes! Today, the question remains, he writes, and he asks, has anything really changed? The answer is no, according to him. Not nearly enough. A few months ago, a new panel made up of some of the original commission members renewed the Kerner Commission warnings and added that America is torn apart by quiet riots such as unemployment, poverty, crime, housing, school segregation. The 1988 panel reported that the only major change is that now we're not moving toward 2 separate societies, but there has now become 2 separate societies, one black and Hispanic and the other white. Now that, to me, is serious. Because if we have become 2 separate societies, one powerful, rich, and privileged, and the other weak, impoverished, divided, and now becoming obsolete or useless. That black society and Hispanic society is in a very dangerous position. In an article that we wrote about a year ago, titled "The Obsolescence of the Black Man and Woman Leads to Death," we said that the black man and woman in America is of no further use to the children of our former slave masters And when a thing loses its use or utility, it loses its value. If your shoes wear out, you don't keep them around. If an old dress becomes old, you don't keep it around. Once it loses utility, you move to get rid of it. If Black America, I'm speaking now of the masses of our people, which white sociologists and social scientists call a permanent underclass. This is unacceptable to us if we are serious about our people. We cannot accept the fact that they say black people have become a permanent underclass. If it is permanent, that means that they do not have solutions or do not have the will to change a present reality. If they can attempt to change the reality of what the oil spill in Alaska has done, though it will take billions of dollars and years of time, then what is the commitment of the United States government to a people who made the country what it is the commitment of the Bush administration or any administration to undo a problem not created by us, but created by their fathers. We have to put it to the government very straight, very strong, with a united front. Listen, if we have become useless in a racist society, then you must know that not public policy, but a covert policy is being already formulated to get rid of that which is useless, since the economy is going down. The world is going down. Follow me now, beloved. According to demographers, if the plummeting birth rate of white people in America continues, in a few years it will reach zero population growth, which means that for every birth there is a death. As for black, Hispanic, and Native Americans, if their present birth rate continues, by the year 2080, the demographers say, blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans will conceivably be 50% or more of the U.S. population. Simultaneously, America is losing control of her borders, resulting in a flood of illegal aliens pouring into the United States. The foothold that communism is gaining in Central America portend wars of liberation resulting in refugee problems. And the populations that will flee to the United States, and the United States must welcome their refugees, since the United States supports the dictators that the liberation struggles are now against. Now look at this. With our increased birth rate, the black man and woman can actually breed ourselves into power. If you add to this the intensity of the immigration flow of dark people into the United States, and then realize that any degree of unity between black, Hispanic, and Native American people will thrust us into power in this country in less than a century. We could control Congress, both houses. Both houses. Although we don't have one black senator, in less than 100 years, if things continue just birthwise. We could control the Congress. We could control the Supreme Court. We could control state legislatures, and then run Jesse run, or run Jesse Jr. run, or run Jesse III run. It's not something to laugh at. It can become a reality. But if you were a racist, sitting in the corner of the basement of the White House, in what is called a situation room, dealing with a potential situation, if you were of the mentality of the growing conservative, anti-black, anti-poor, anti-Hispanic and Native American mood in this country, what directives would you give to those who think as you think? And what steps would you take to ensure that this country does not fall into the hands of the children of slaves, Native Americans, and Mexicans? Certainly there could not be public debate on what steps to take. Therefore, America could not make public policy. But I firmly believe that the National Security Council of the United States and the President, as well as former presidents, have had this question under serious consideration and have quietly formulated a policy to deal with this problem, because the time has dictated the agenda. The time says the black man and dark people all over the world are on the rise. The time says that white world supremacy is on its way out. So time has dictated their agenda. Time must now dictate ours. Continued poverty is one of the means of ensuring destruction of our people, and it is a subtle form of genocide. In a recent article, Newsweek reported that poverty is the greatest obstacle to improving the quality of health in the black community, which is now facing a health crisis. Infant mortality, heart disease, cancer, stroke, chronic liver disease, and AIDS afflict us disproportionately. There are 59,000 excess deaths annually in the black community. So that means that our death rate is above, way above the normal death rate, which is far beyond that of whites. According to reports, the scientists of this world have developed chemical weapons, ethnic gases, which can be put into a room to affect only those of a certain genetic makeup. The United States and Russia are charging each other with developing the AIDS virus as a means of getting rid of large segments of people. They said it came from homosexuals and those who are drug addicts. But the greatest focus of AIDS is Central Africa, where those people don't know anything about homosexuality, nor do they use drugs. Please listen, because time has set white folks' agenda. And I don't care how they smile or pat you on the back and skin and grin, you got to be aware of it. Listen, the rich mineral resources that are in Central and Southern Africa, and who is in control of those resources, will determine who will be the power in the 21st century. Because the 21st century, anybody that's going to be in power has to be in control of the strategic metals and minerals of the earth, much of which are in Central Africa. It is not accidental that the greatest concentration of AIDS victims in the world is in Central Africa. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad warned us that there would be widespread death, but can we go through it? And if so, how? Death is all around us, brother and sister. It's in the water, it's in the air, it's in the food. What preparation in our agenda is there to survive the destruction of the environment? This is serious, brothers and sisters. We're going to have to consider an agenda for black people.
Yes.
Well, if America has no more use for us, we are valueless in her eyes. Could this be the reason for the increasing murders of black people across this country at the hands of whites? Could this be the reason for the increased hostility of black students on white campuses throughout America? Throughout the country, we are now the victims of an increasing number of physical assaults, especially of our women and youth. These incidents are not given national news coverage, so our people are unaware of their frequency. We don't bring drugs into this country. Our children are not prone to be criminals. Why has such criminality become the order of the day in the black community? We don't make Uzis or Mac-10s. How do the gangs get Uzis? Who is it that sees our being in the cities of America and taking control of the cities as a threat? Their agenda says move the blacks out of the cities, take control of the cities by whatever means necessary. By what means shall you adopt, since religion is no longer effective in controlling the youth?
Yes.
Since education is no longer effective in controlling our youth, put this dangerous cocaine called crack, put it in the hands of the youth. Give them a chance to sell death to one another, that they may have the nice clothes that the former mayor wears, or the state senator wears, or Miss Tucker wears, or Miss Edelin wears, or that Farrakhan wears. We can wear it because we have some means of visible support. But what about the poor, the hopeless, the lost? Who cares about the masses of our people? Go beyond a political position. Please hear me. We cannot equate an appointed position in government or an elected office in government as equal to solving the problems of the masses of our people. We cannot say that we are making progress because we have 500 mayors and we are going backward in terms of our relationship economically to the white community. We cannot say that we are making progress when our own community is turning on itself and we now have become the #1 destroyers of one another. We cannot say we're making progress until, in the words of Reverend Jackson, we lift the boats that are stuck at the bottom, and most of those boats are black and Hispanic and poor white. But white folk have a mechanism to lift them. We've got to develop a mechanism that will allow us to lift our own people. Beloved, I hope you will bear with me. I got to check my watch. Now, listen, there are a few more points I wanted to make. Beloved brothers and sisters, you represent, much of you, the learned of our people, the more qualified of our people. The hope of our people is in the learned. But the learned, unfortunately, have not yet learned. Please, there is an undergirding philosophy that guides Western education. That undergirding philosophy is very subtle, pervasive, and poisonous, because it makes those of us who acquire education somehow think we are better than another human being who has not yet achieved. It makes those of us who acquire education and letters behind our name, BA, BS, MA, MS, PhD, DD, and whatnot. We begin to think that we have arrived in some magical kind of way, with a certain arrogance that we don't want to serve our people, we want our people to serve us. Beloved, what is our responsibility? The responsibility of knowledge is not to get money, though money should attend our growth into knowledge. Success materially should attend our growth into knowledge, but the purpose for knowledge is not acquisition of material things. The purpose of knowledge is to prepare us to serve that which will outlive us, and the thing that will outlive us is the people. The masses of the people will always be here, but we have come and we will soon go. But what will our contribution be to the onward struggle of our people? We need to develop a proper agenda, not just an African, American, or black agenda that serves a few persons politically who are aspiring to go here or there. We must stop this vanity. We must stop this self-seeking. And we must ache when our little brother in the ghetto aches. We must pain when the mother cries out for justice. We must see after the needs of our people. Jesus made a parable. He called it, I call it rather, excuse me, the parable of use. Because what you don't use by the law of use, you can forfeit. What you abuse, you can forfeit. So non-use, misuse, or abuse of what we possess, including our own person and our property, could lead us to lose it. You got a child, that's your child. But you abuse it, society can take it from you. You don't know how to use it properly, you lose it. It's your life. It's your life. But if we catch you trying to commit suicide, we can stop you and then confine you and take away your rights and privileges because you have proved unworthy to steward your own life. So society has the right to steward it for you. Well now, what about 30 to 40 million people that have no utility now? Not only are they not used, they are misused and abused. Then by that faulty stewardship, America has forfeited the right to steward our lives. We cannot put our future in the hands of a government that has not shown a willingness to care for us. Dear politicians, we know we can get something from the political process, but we cannot pin our hopes on a government that brought our fathers into slavery and to this very moment refuses to give us justice. Do you remember? I'm moving quickly. Forgive me. Do you remember that this people took from us name, language, culture, religion, God, then hitched us to a plow, denied us the right to marry, and produced the basic unit of civilization, which is family, denied us the right over our own bodies, that we as black men became stud horses, and our women became women of convenience for us to go into. So she could make a baby that the slave master may sell from one plantation to another. While the father went one way, the mother went another, the baby went another. This didn't happen for one day. This didn't happen for 1 year, but for 300 long years. What is the effect of that on the moral character of a people? What is the effect of that on a people psychologically? So here comes Abraham Lincoln, not willing to free you, but desiring to preserve the Union. Mr. Lincoln, the father of the Republican Party, said that he was not in favor of making you Jews. He was not in favor of your becoming equal. That as long as you were in America, there would always be the position of superior and inferior, and he, as much as any other white man, desired the superior position to be assigned to the white race. These are the words of Lincoln in the Lincoln-Douglas debate. Now listen. That condition prevails today. He said, we suffer from your presence. And you suffer from our feelings concerning you. The suffering continues. Hear me, my beloved brothers and sisters. The government of the United States, in letting us go, didn't help us to amend the condition that 300 years of slavery had put us in. Please listen. They amended the Constitution, which is a document of paper. So they amended it with the stroke of the pen. One day we were slaves. Next day we were free. Next day we are citizens. Next day due process of law. Next day civil rights law, public accommodations law. What does that really mean? Oh, I don't have time to analyze these things with you. But beloved, please, if I can just say it in quick little spurts, you're deep enough to go on into it as we must in developing an agenda. Oh, God. Okay.
Take your time, brother.
The United States government, recognizing that we were incapable of going for ourselves, they struck down the law of voluntary slavery with the 14th Amendment or the 13th Amendment. But what about voluntary slavery? They struck down the law relating to involuntary slavery. But don't you know, when you don't know how to go for yourself, and we strike down involuntary slavery, you voluntarily become what you were yesterday involuntarily. And look at you today. Look at you today, involuntary slaves that got to confer with your master. Oh. Some of you wonder, if he says the wrong thing, maybe somebody won't finance me. Maybe I won't get a few crumbs. Shame on you, you modern day slaves. They promised us 40 acres and a mule, and they took that back. We gave America her freedom, her right to become a sovereign nation. We fought, bled, and died in the Revolutionary War. Over 400,000 black people were in the Civil War on the side of the North and the South. We fought for America, helped her to become independent and strong. She became strong on the labor and the backs of black people held back by fraud. Now here we are in 1989, looking for our next welfare check when our money is in Fort Knox. The money that belonged to the descendant of slaves is in Fort Knox. Yes, Reverend Jackson, I'm with you. We should go after the pension fund. But Reverend Jackson reason we need to move on the government from a position of strength based upon a moral principle and a precedent that has already been set. When the Jews were mistreated by Germany, after the Germans were liberated by the Western society, the Germans built their economy, and now they're paying reparations to the Jews to the tune of billions of dollars to repair the damage. In 1941, when Japan struck Pearl Harbor, they put the blacks, the Japanese in concentration camps, confiscated their property, but the Congress, feeling remorseful, feeling sorry, knowing that they were wrong, Congress said, we got to right this wrong. So they decided that reparations would do the Japanese. Well then, I appeal to you. Come on. Bring it on. I got a plane to catch, I got another engagement, but I got to complete this point. We need to go to the government and say to the government, hold on, sister.
I make a motion that we give Brother Farrakhan as much time as he needs to.
No, I want to say this, that it is not the convention heads that are limiting my time. They are telling me go on. I just have a plane to catch for another engagement, but I'm going to try to tie this right up. Listen, we need to, as a united front, go to the government and say, look, you've done this here, you've done this there. What about us? What about us? Why should our people have to subsist on charity or live in poor houses when we built the country for you? Fought, bled, and died to maintain the country for you. You ask us to pay taxes like everybody else. Wait a minute, we don't get justice. We give you our tax dollar to support a police department that doesn't respect us. We give you our tax dollar to support education that does not educate us properly. We give you our tax dollar. You spend $4 billion each year on Israel to maintain Israel in a welfare position. You spend billions of dollars. You rebuilt Germany. You rebuilt Japan. Here we are, fought, bled, and died, made you what you are. What are you willing to calm down with? Partway through what I wanted to say, because if the government doesn't do their part, we've got to do ours. We've got to understand that education as it is not sufficient. We need a re-education. We need an education that will make us able to serve ourselves and one another. We have to tell the preachers, all the preachers, we got work to do. We've got to make our people valuable to themselves. The educators, the preachers, and the politicians, we must work together, pull our strength inward. Stop trying to prove to white people that you're such a good lapdog. And bring your talents home and let's lift the boats that are stuck at the bottom. We must heal the breach between Reverend Jackson and Louis Farrakhan. We must never be a divided community. We must not be afraid to embrace one another, because it is our unity that will spell the success, and it is our division that will legislate us or dictate our failure. And history will record us as the most foolish people that ever lived, that we had a chance to develop an agenda to save ourselves and we blew it. So in my conclusion, Jesus made a parable. Jesus, I got to go. Jesus made a parable. He told his disciples, when you go down by the well, you're going to see an ass and a colt tied with her. Loose them, loose the ass and the colt, and bring them unto me. And if any man say anything to you, tell them the Lord hath need of them. In this instruction to his disciples, Jesus applies the principle of use. The black man in America is comparable to the donkey that is tied. He's no longer useful to the slave master's children, but the cord of ownership is still on his neck. We're not stealing your slaves. You have no more use for them. We got use for them. So we are coming to cut the cord that ties you to an evil master and telling you if they don't have use for you, the Lord have need of you. He will take a foolish people and vex a great nation with a foolish people. He will take the things that are weak to confound the things which are mighty, and the base things of the world and things which are despised hath God chosen. And so, my beloved, don't worry, the future is bright. The future is going to be all right if we act in accord with the time. What time is it? Rhetorically, you used to say nation time. But substantively, it is time for us to get out of a slave mode and get into the mode of a free man. It's time to come to birth in a new mentality and to put to death an old slave mind. It's time to be born as a new person and to die as the old Negro. It's time to come together as a family, not being divided by Baptist, Methodist, Episcopalian, Church of God in Christ, Muslim, Buddhist. We are one family, not being divided by Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. What do these names mean? We are a family. We need to come together into unity. And so, my beloved family, my dear and beloved brothers and sisters, last but not least, our youth are languishing in prison with no hope. Prisons full. I would like to propose that since we are the sons and daughters of Africa, and we have not given up our connection to or our right to the mother continent. Are you listening? We got a greater right to Africa than the Jews have to Palestine. Are you listening? Don't be angry with me. They are Europeans, many of them, that have never lived in Palestine. Are you listening to me? But the governments united and took a home from the Palestinians and gave it to the Jews in the name of prophecy. Well, all right, we come back in that same name of prophecy. We are the lost sheep. We are the people, the prodigal son that went away into a strange land to live the life of strange people. But now we have been found. Many of us, we have contributed to make America great, and we don't want to leave America. But there is a significant part of black people that want to return. Listen now, I think we ought to appeal. I think we ought to appeal to our African brothers and sisters and say, look, there's a significant part of us that want to come home. We want you to set aside some territory for us in Africa. Listen, that's fertile and minerally rich with an outlet to the sea. Listen now, we want to bring home what we've learned by our sojourn in America. And just like you made the Jews citizens of Israel and citizens of America. We want to be citizens of Africa. But since America was founded by criminals, they let the prisons turn them out, and they came and laid the base of a new world. I'm saying that in the jails of America, there's strong black men who are not criminals. Malcolm X was in jail, but the word got him and brought him up, and he made a change in everybody's life that he touched. Best of us is in jail. But if you give me, you're tired and you're poor, you're huddled mountain, yearning to breathe free, just send them the homeless tempest tossed to the nation of Islam, and we'll make them better. Then we'll ask the president, let them go. Let them do their time in Africa. $1,000 a year to keep them. You give that money to us and invest it along with damages, along with preparation. And let's build here, let's build there, and remember as I leave you, even though you say African American, let that never be a denial of black. Because before there was a continent named Africa, we were black. Remember now, white folk named that continent Africa, and white folk named this continent America. Now you can be African American, but if you forget your blackness, then you won't tie yourself to the black people in Brazil, in Nicaragua, in Costa Rica, in Guatemala, in Honduras, in Central America, in the Caribbean, in South America, in the Isles of the Pacific, in Fiji, in Papua New Guinea, in Australia. Black people all over the world